Folks, Black Star Network is here.
Oh, no punches!
I'm real revolutionary right now.
Support this man, Black Media. He makes sure that our stories are told.
Thank you for being the voice of Black America, Roland.
Stay black. I love y'all.
All momentum we have now, we have to keep this going.
The video looks phenomenal.
See, this difference between Black Star Network and Black-owned media and something like CNN.
You can't be Black-owned media and be scared.
It's time to be smart.
Bring your eyeballs home.
You dig? All right, folks, today is Friday, January 9th, 2026. Coming up on Roland Martin Unfiltered, streaming live on the Black Star Network. Some major developments out of Minneapolis. We now have a new video taken from the perspective of one of the ICE officers. It actually does not help them at all. We'll also talk to a city councilwoman in Minneapolis where the Hennepin County DA says they're going to charge the officer, Jonathan Ross, who shot and killed the white woman in Minneapolis. It's a whole lot that we're dealing with, is breaking down in this story. So lots of new developments, and we're going to be getting right to it. Also on today's show, we'll talk about what's with Bishop William Barber, what's happening in North Carolina, where he says, hey, guess what, folks? This is our Selma when it comes to voting and civil rights. We'll also talk with the sheriff of Philadelphia County. She makes it clear, ICE, do not bring your thuggish behavior to my county or we're going to put you in jail. We're going to talk with her as well, folks. It's a lot we're going to break down on today's show. It is, of course, also the jobs report comes out. The economy under Trump has absolutely sucked. I thought he's supposed to be better for the economy than Vice President Kamala Harris. Well, we knew that was a lie. It's time to breathe the funk. I'm Roland Martin Unfiltered on the Black Star Network. Let's go.
He's got whatever the miss, he's on it. Whatever it is, he's got the scoop, the fact, the find. And when it breaks, he's right on time and it's rolling. Best believe he's knowing. Putting it down from sports to news to politics. With entertainment just for kicks, he's rolling. It's on go, roll, y'all. It's Roland Martin, yeah. Rolling with Roland now. He's funk, he's fresh, he's real, the best, you know he's Roland Martin now.
Folks, for the last few hours, social media has been ablaze with a new video from the perspective of one of the ICE officers who shot and killed Renee Good. This video gives us a direct account of what took place. And if they think that this somehow helps their case, they're absolutely wrong. Watch this.
Change our plates every morning, just so you know. It'll be the same plate when you come talk to us later. That's fine. U.S. citizen, former fucking veteran. You want to come at us? You want to come at us? I say go get yourself some lunch, big boy. Go ahead.
Out of the car. Get out of the fucking car. Get out of the car.
Whoa! Folks, you see exactly what took place right there. So I want to play the video again so you can have a better understanding. And so you see Renee Good. You see she's smiling. No big deal. And then the officers, they decide to take their particular action. This is absolutely crazy. Roll the video again.
change our plates every morning, just so you know. It'll be the same plate when you come talk to us later. That's fine. U.S. citizen, former fucking veteran. You want to come at us? You want to come at us? I say go get yourself some lunch, big boy. Go ahead.
Out of the car. Get out of the fucking car. Get out of the
All right,
car.
baby, come on.
Yo, that is real. Hennepin County DA makes it clear that this officer, Jonathan Ross, is going to be charged for the death of Renee Good. This is beyond shameful, which actually took place now that this video is coming out. And a lot of folks are talking about what's going on here. Retired FBI agent, U.S. Air Force veteran, and crime fiction author Steve Lazarus, he put this video out talking about how this should have gone down. Watch this.
Here's my take on the Minneapolis ICE shooting. Not from the standpoint of a politician or an activist, but through the lens of a 30-year career in law enforcement. I'm going to start by stating the obvious. I wasn't there. I haven't seen what happened before the video starts. That said, the more I watch it, the angrier I get. I spent 18 of my 22 years in the FBI as a firearms instructor. I didn't just teach agents how to shoot, I taught them when to shoot. One principle we hammered home was simple. Deadly force is never authorized merely to stop a fleeing suspect. Yes, if a vehicle is being used as a weapon, that changes the analysis, but nothing in this video supports that. If anything, it appeared the driver was just trying to avoid the agents altogether. Normally, I give law enforcement the benefit of the doubt when it comes to dealing with high-stress situations. But I can't do that here. At a minimum, this shooting reflects a failure of training and supervision. The deeper question, however, is whether law enforcement agencies are selecting and properly vetting people with the temperament and judgment required to make irreversible life and death decisions in seconds.
Yeah, that's actually the case right there. Robin Wansley is a member of the Minneapolis City Council. She's the Minneapolis City Council minority leader. Robin joins us right now. And this is obviously, Robin roiled the city. We're now back. Minneapolis is now, the center of conversation when it comes to law enforcement shooting. And to have the federal government literally say, we don't even want the state or the city involved in the investigation shows that, frankly, they want to cover this up.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I don't think it's not short of a coincidence that where Renee Good was shot and killed by a federal ICE agent on Wednesday morning. It happened just a few blocks away from where George Floyd was also killed by a Minneapolis police officer by the name of Derek Chauvin back in the May of 2020. And we're seeing similar responses happen in that. We're seeing the Trump administration, which at that time, it was our own city leadership in response to George Floyd's murder, trying to craft a smear campaign and mischaracterization of who the victims are. And we're seeing the Trump administration do that by framing Renee Good as an aggressor and thus warranted of the basically warned of her death, warned of the officer shooting and killing her. And we heard the same. Many stories put out about George Floyd and how somehow Derek Chauvin kneeling on his neck was not the cause of him dying. Even though also in both cases, there's video footage that shows clearly what happened, that these people were murdered at the hands of a law enforcement officer. And what I'm also very proud of in this fact is, same in 2020, our residents didn't wait for federal action to come in, intervene, to get justice for George Floyd. They organized for it. And we're doing the same here. That was one of the first demands that we put out, was that the federal agent responsible for Renee Good's murder, his name is Jonathan Ross, should be arrested and prosecuted. And when the BCA and when our state leaders started to move in a way as if they were retreating from it, our residents continued to organize and put pressure on elected officials to say, no, you need to see this through. Because if we allow this to happen, this sets a new standard for our federal administration as they're invading and occupying other cities under this campaign of cruelty that they're using under the guise of immigration and keeping communities safe and going after the bad guys. They're going to use that as a way to give federal agents the right to kill with impunity, We fought against that even amongst regular cops. And Black Lives Matter following George Floyd's murder. We said, regardless, if you have a badge, you do not have a license to kill. And the same applies here. And just as we got justice for George Floyd, we are going to organize and get justice for Renee Good and all of our residents who've been kidnapped and abducted at the hands of these violent federal ICE agents, and set a new standard that you don't get to do this. And you won't do this in Minneapolis.
Yeah, and what you have here is what does Donald Trump do? He's now sent more federal law enforcement to Minneapolis.
Yes, he's now sent Border Patrol. I would say, actually, speaking of Black Lives Matter, one of our key leaders was actually sprayed with chemical irritants by a Border Patrol officer right after Renee Good was murdered on Wednesday. So it shows very clear that this whole story that they've been telling to the American people, that again, immigrants are your problem. This is why we need to go after them. This is why we need $1 billion to fund the ICE agency and the FBI to go after these people. It just shows it's actually a lie. They are going after everyone. And they tried this out in my home city of Chicago. When they went in and said, we're going to take out violent, immigrant and criminals and things of that nature. But somehow you're on the South Side detaining Black residents over there in their apartment buildings. How did we get there? And we're seeing the same thing here. They said they came in for immigrants, but you end up shooting a 37-year-old white woman on a Wednesday morning. Now you're shooting chemical irritants at Black residents. We just got word today that a U.S. citizen was also detained here in Minneapolis during one of their raids. So it's very clear that no one is safe when ICE is present. And that is the agenda of the Trump administration. They don't aim to make our country or our community safe. They want to make sure that they can use blunt force to silence any type of opposition to their racist and very profit-driven agenda nationally. And they want to use federal agents, their law enforcement arm, as a vehicle to normalize that violence and to enact that violence. And then they expect us to take it lying down. And once again, I'm glad that Minneapolis, we have our deep history here of advocacy and organizing. And we're showing, no, we will not. We will get justice. We will arrest your federal agent, and we will hold you accountable for infringing upon our own rights as a state to protect our residents using your federal ICE agents.
Well, it goes to show you exactly how they operate and how they move. And so we're going to see what happens next. Don't be surprised if Donald Trump does all he can to protect this officer. And again, he can protect him on federal charges, but he cannot do anything when it comes to state charges.
Exactly. And that's why I'm so proud of our leaders, specifically our Hennepin County attorney, as well as our Attorney General, Keith Ellison. Our Hennepin County attorney is Mary Moriarty, that they said, look, we're standing 10 toes down on delivering justice for Renee Good, and we're not going to just retreat because the federal government said so. They're launching their own independent investigation. That was another main rallying cry and demand that we heard off the ground. This officer needs to be prosecuted, and we need to have an independent investigation, because there is no way that we're going to have the federal agency that caused this murder and is already working overtime to discredit the victim and also basically create the conditions for a dismissal. We're not going to let them just have that investigation to set that as a new legal mandate. No, we are going to do our own independent investigation. We're going to trust civilians in our own community to deliver the evidence that we need to put this man away behind bars. And we know we can do this because we've done it before. It was a young Black woman by the name of Darnella Frazier who filmed George Floyd's murder in 2020. And again, at that time, the city was working to basically cover up his murder. And had it not been for Darnella Frazier recording that, as well as dozens of residents recording and gathering evidence and footage of what actually transpired, if it wasn't for them, we would not have had that victory. And so I'm glad that our elected leadership also knows it's the residents here who were on the ground, who know what happened, that captured what happened, and they're going to play an essential piece or role and making sure that a thorough investigation happens that leads to Jonathan Ross, the federal agent responsible for Renee Good's murder, be put behind bars, just like we did with Derek Chauvin and the other officers involved with George Floyd back in 2020.
All right, then. Councilwoman, we appreciate it. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Folks, going to go to a quick break. We'll be right back with our panel right here on Roland Martin Unfiltered on the Black Star Network.
If in this country right now, you have people get up in the morning and the only thing they can think about is how many people they can hurt, and they got the power, that's the time for mourning.
For better or worse, what makes America special, it's that legal system that's supposed to protect minorities from the tyranny of the majority.
We are at a point of a moral emergency. We must raise a voice of outrage. We must raise a voice of compassion. And we must raise a voice of unity.
We are not in a crisis of party versus party. We are in a crisis of civilization, a human rights crisis, and a crisis of democracy itself. And guess what? You've been chosen to make sure that those that would destroy, those that would hate, don't have the final say, and they don't ultimately win.
Hey y'all, welcome to The Other Side of Change, only on the Black Star Network and hosted by myself, Rhea Baker, and my good sis, Jamira Burley. We are just two millennial women tackling everything at the intersection of politics, gender, and pop culture.
And we don't just settle for commentary. This is about solution-driven dialogue to get us to the world as it could be and not just as it is.
Watch us on the Black Star Network, so tune in to The Other Side of Change.
Melanie Campbell, National Coalition on Black Civic Participation and Black Women's Roundtable. And we are watching Roland Martin Unfiltered all day, every day, 24/7. Spread the word.
All right, folks. Yesterday, Philadelphia County Sheriff Rochelle Bilal. Woo! Let's just say she spoke some truth when it came to what would happen if these ICE agents decide to roll up in her county and showing their ass. Watch this.
I'm Rochelle Bilal, the sheriff for the city and county of Philadelphia. And I say her name, Renee Good. Renee Good. Renee Good. Renee Good. Renee Good. Renee Good. This should not have happened, but we're here today. Let know that law enforcement professionals, real ones, not the fake made up ICE, probably Trump's new army to attack citizens of the United States. Did you hear what I said? No law enforcement professional wears a mask. None. None. Those that come into our communities wearing a mask to commit crime, thank God for our district attorney, Larry Krasner, who say he's going to lock them up. And I'm saying now, we are not going to whisk you away for them to hide your identity, because when you do it there, you're getting arrested there. No whisk away for them to hide you. None of that here. None of that here. Law enforcement professionals do not shoot at moving vehicles. I'm not saying fleeing, because she wasn't fleeing. She was getting out of the way. Law enforcement professionals do not stand in front of moving vehicles invoking an action that is illegal. No, we don't. And so we stand here today with all those who stand against the made-up, fake, what you can call ICE, professional law enforcement. I don't call them none of that. I call them made-up, fake, wannabe law enforcement. Because what they do is against not only legal law, but the moral law. So I'm with the DA, and we will work with them. If any of them want to come in this city and commit a crime, you will not be able to hide. Nobody will wish you off. You don't want this smoke, because we will bring it to you. And the fake, whatever they call them, because I can't say the name, but the criminal in the White House would not be able to keep you from going to jail. Renee Good should be here today. And to her family, we are saying law enforcement professionals are not the ones here in this city that would do that. But here's the last thing that I will say. Law enforcement professionals around the country do their job, and we have been fighting for years to build that bridge between us and our communities. You have one negative nutcase that causes this problem, and now we all have to fight again to let people know law enforcement works with communities. These crimes would not be down if we didn't have communities work with us.
Joining us right now is the Sheriff of Philadelphia County, Rochelle Belong. Glad to have you on the show. So you cut right to the chase. You got MAGA folks mad at you, saying you should resign. But also, look, there are black sheriffs in in North Carolina have made it clear they were not going to cooperate with ICE. We saw the black police chief in Illinois, how they were just running roughshod over them and just ignoring them and treating them like crap in one of the Chicago suburbs.
Yeah, well, the MAGA people are really mad because I'm getting all kinds of threats, but I ain't a scared person. I've never been. I've been in this position before. I shut down a racist website called Dome Lights, where police officers in Philadelphia was at their desks, at their job, spitting out hate against black people. And I got threats from them. So this ain't no new place. I'm not scared of these folks. We need to start standing up and saying, you're not coming in our city and just run crazy over here. You're not going to do that. We got a district attorney that says you commit a crime, he going to lock you up. Okay, and we'll transport you to where you need to go. Not whisk you away to hide your identification. Not do none of that. We're going to stand 10 toes down on standing up for the citizens of the city and doing our job.
And the thing here is they know they have somebody sitting in the White House who will let them do whatever they want, and they have grossly disrespected local law enforcement. Normally, when you're the feds, when you come into a state, you talk to the police chief, you talk to the sheriff, you talk to the state police. These folks are like, we don't give a damn what y'all think. We can do what we want, when we want, and we expect y'all to follow behind us.
ICE has been in cities way before this type of situation and have cooperated, came with warrants, was respectful, worked out situations. Not these. Do you know? I get this information that they get 47 days of training. 47? That means they don't even know what they're doing out here in our neighborhoods. And at some point, every neighborhood around the country need to stand up and say, no, we are not going to take this. And if you come in our cities and commit a crime, if your district attorney don't want to lock them up, then you need to get a new one. But ours here said he's going to lock them up, and that's exactly what we're going to do. And the sheriff's office transport prisoners, so we will transport you.
The thing here is, I was having a conversation with a black conservative who was defending law enforcement, and I said, dude, we don't know if these people are real law enforcement. He said, yes, they are. I said, no, we don't. I said, we don't know if these are Proud Boys, if these are Oath Keepers. We don't know if they're bounty hunters. You don't have names, you don't have faces. I said, so we don't know. They're just grabbing anybody, and these folks are just doing whatever. They're busting windows. They're accosting people. They're just rolling up on folks. We're going to play a video later. It's about a 7-minute video where this African brother in Minneapolis was giving them the business. And then they were demanding his information. They eventually walked away. They had no legal basis to stop him. And it was like 8 or 10 of them surrounding this brother.
Well, you probably need 8 or 10 of them on one person because they scared. No, they don't have any identification, no ID. They put masks on, and you are right, because law enforcement professionals don't wear masks unless you have to, cover up to testify, so they don't know who you are if you was undercover. But they don't walk out here with masks. If you're doing the right thing, you stand on who you are and the law in that city. They don't wear masks. These people coming in with masks, and I'm with you. I don't know if they the Oak Boys, the Proud Boys, the Boy Boys. I don't know if they the nuts of the insurrection on January the 6th. Are these the failed ones that couldn't get into police departments, couldn't get into the FBI, couldn't get into the DEA, and they're taking them because they lowered their stances so low that they take anything and anybody? No. Professionals, law enforcement people, do the right thing. They abide by the law. Not saying they perfect, because none of us are perfect. But the one thing they don't wear is a mask out there because they stand on the law. These are not standing on the law. That's why they try to hide their identity. I think they're scared. And if they ain't scared, take your mask off. Step up like a man or woman you think you are and come into these cities unmasked and claim you're going to do the right thing. Do that.
In the video we're going to show, he was asking, man, who are y'all? And they had like RD6, so they had no names, no badge numbers, no nothing. So you can't report it. And then we did another story where there was this black guy who was stopped at the cops by somebody wearing fake ICE stuff, which you can get on Amazon. And so you got people who are impersonating ICE and Border Patrol, and you don't know who the hell these folks are. So when they say, well, you got to comply, I don't know who the hell y'all are. You rolled up with a mask on, no name, no patches, no nothing. I'm supposed to give you the benefit of the doubt. Let's remind people that a Minnesota, in Minneapolis, a Minnesota state senator was shot and killed by a guy impersonating a cop at her door. They shot and killed her husband. They severely wounded another state official and his wife.
And they can perpetrate, but I think the ones coming in the city is perpetrating too. We have to keep people safe in our cities. And then we have to speak up against those that are not. This is a fake thing that they came in here. We're making your city safe. You're making our cities more dangerous. You're coming up to people with no identification. They don't know who you are. You mask up. Let me just say this. If they put legislation out there in your city that banned the mask for young black kids in your city, and now you got these people coming in, call themselves ICE agents, and they masked up, where's the legislation on banning them? We have to make some rules in all these cities to stop the nonsense. I'm not a legislator, so we need to call on our legislators to do something about this. You just can't keep running up on people. And that's going to cause a situation because you run up on people with a mask. They don't know who you are. You claim you ICE, but there are people that are perpetrating the fake ICE people. So you got fake on fake. No, stop the nonsense. You want to claim you're a legitimate law enforcement? Take the mask off, get your ID, put the badge on, and come with the proper paperwork.
Introduce my panel, Candace Kelly, legal analyst, host of Not All Hood out of South Orange, New Jersey. Matt Manning, civil rights attorney out of Corpus Christi, Texas. Michael Imhotep, host, African History Network show out of Detroit. Candace, your question for Sheriff Bilal.
As to whether or not ICE is actually going to come to Philadelphia. Is there a high likelihood? Is that what you are hearing? I know you're close to the pulse of everything.
No, I haven't heard that. You have ICE agents here because people saying to me they are around our courthouse because our deputies are the ones that secure the courthouse and deal with the warrants from the judges. So they're outside courthouses, they're outside buildings. I'm not hearing that they're coming in here like they invading other cities, but the ones that we have here, we got to deal with them.
Thank you.
Matt?
State law often gives federal agents certain powers. As it relates to Pennsylvania, do those ICE agents actually have any powers outside of the federal enforcement, or what is the interplay, I guess, between state law and what they're actually able to do? Because I suspect we're going to be hearing that they're going to say we're empowered to come in and enforce state law as they sometimes do in other places. What's your experience in that respect?
Because in Philadelphia, you have the sheriff and you have the police department. Under my jurisdiction is where the courts are. ICE cannot come in the courts to arrest anybody. And if they do, they let us know in advance, and they have to have a valid warrant signed by a judge. And they don't take them out of the courts. They don't go in the courtrooms. We will take them back to where they were, and they have to go there to get them. They don't just invade the courts here, but they're outside lingering, and they're outside trying to capture people coming out. But what we have in our city, and I'm running I deal with the courts and their security. They don't come inside the courts to grab anybody outside. They're lingering outside of that. And I can't stop them because the sidewalk is public. The courthouse is public. The only person that can stop them from even being outside is legislation or a judge. And I'm waiting on that.
Michael.
Sheriff Bilal, I saw your video today. Thanks so much for your heartfelt words. My question is, I know under the Obama administration, he deported 3.1 million undocumented immigrants, but they did it the correct way, like you're talking about. What has been some of the response from those in the African-American community where you live who may have voted for Donald Trump because they said he's going to deport the undocumented immigrants that are taking Black people's jobs? But then we see all this hell breaking loose. Okay. And Obama deported more per month on average than Trump is doing. What are some of the responses that you're hearing on the ground?
Well, the ones that voted for him feeling sick to their stomach right now because the promises he made to all of these people and even Black people, and I can't see why they even did that, but because they was fooled. Now the they're fooled, and now it's on them. Now they sick to their stomach because they done cut off whatever benefits. They done stopped them from doing this, and they coming to get. Look, they probably coming to get us at the next go around. Before we sat back and said it ain't us, it's all of us. It's all of us. If we are not a racist, bigot, maggot participant, then it's all of us. Doesn't matter what shade, what political state you are in, it's all of us. And so if they don't get off their butt, they sick now. And now they're trying to figure out what it is they want to do. I tell them what, they need to get out here with the rest of these folks and fight back and not just take it.
Thank you.
Well, there are a lot of folks who are highly critical of their actions. And I think what this shooting has done, it has finally woken some folks up. And listen, they had been attacking Black and brown people. And let's just be frank. This is a white woman who was shot and killed. And the right is trying to say, oh, she was this left-wing terrorist, lesbian, all this sort of stuff like this. But I think them shooting this white woman in the face and killing her is going to cause some other white folks to realize that, guess what? It ain't just the brown people.
They not exempt. And that's what I said. It's all of us. If you're not a part of that group of people, I say the cult, because that's the way I see it. And that's my personal opinion. If you're not a part of that, then you are the next person in line for them to come, step up on you, mask that, try to grab you out your car, throw you on the ground. This is ridiculous on what's happening. And I'm speaking now, and some people may be mad. I don't care at this time. I got family. I got grandkids. I got friends. I'm speaking up because I live here in America, and this is unjust. And in my book, I'm just not going to sit back and let it happen. And I don't care about the threats. Bring them. I'm a law enforcement person. I was well trained. I had more than 47 days of training. Trust me, more than that.
This crazy Black Republican from Texas, Wesley Hunt, decided to give his perspective and weigh in on this shooting. And Sheriff, I would love to hear your response to this. Let's play that.
clear that she tried to use her vehicle as a weapon, mow over an ICE agent, and now she is dead. And her death is tragic, but at the end of the day, it was completely avoidable if she would have simply followed the commands of the ICE agents. But what really is more disturbing to me is Governor Walz's comments about using the National Guard to keep the federal government ICE agents out of his state. He has now gone full Jefferson Davis, and that's what I would call civil war. This is a problem. The left always does this. They always clamor for more violence. They always clamor for more rioting. Minneapolis, they've already burned to the ground. The violence must stop. We must respect law enforcement, respect this president that said, I am going to clamp down on illegal immigration, and Minneapolis has become a cesspool for illegal immigration, and we're not standing for it any longer.
What, he trying to buck for a job or something? Because I seen all the people that used to speak up for the criminal in the White House, and ain't none of them got a job. So I guess he's trying to come in and get one. First of all, I saw that video frame by frame by frame. As a law enforcement professional, you don't put yourself in harm's way. You don't stand in front of a vehicle. He had enough space to get out of the way, and he shot in front. And now he's on the side. And you shoot 2 more times, there's no threat there. She wasn't trying to run him over. She's trying to get out of the way. Get away from them. What was you going to obey? You come up all masked up. You're going to try to open up my car and pull me out, and I ain't got nothing to do with what you're doing? I'd have took off too. She took off because she was scared. And then this nutcase talking about you're going to respect law enforcement. Hell, they don't respect law enforcement. January the 6th, they was trying to kill the law enforcement professionals up there at the White House. They was trying to kill them. So you talking about respect law enforcement? You should have respect them then on January the 6th. See, he don't even know what he's talking about. But if you bucking for a job and you keep being a handkerchief head Negro, exactly what you're doing, then go ahead and do that. Go over there and get a job over there. And because you're black, he ain't gonna give you one either. So you might as well just stay where you are and just get out of the way with the nonsense. Because you can't talk about respecting law enforcement when you try to kill something. You can't talk about respecting the president when he don't respect the citizens of this country. Look, I ain't got nothing else to say about him. Go get a job somewhere else.
Here's the thing that is amazing to me when I listen to these people, and this is what I never understood. I remember there was a story out of Cleveland, and it was a black couple, and the cop jumped on top of the car and fired a bunch of shots into the car. We've had other stories that we've done jumping in front of a car. And matter of fact, I remember Kajima Powell. This was in St. Louis shortly after Michael Brown had been shot and killed. And Kajima Powell had a serious, it was a mental issue. It was a mental call. It wasn't more than 16 seconds from the time the officers arrived on the scene, and the door, it was 16 seconds from when the door opened to the first shot fired that killed Kajima Powell. And I remember when that happened, and Powell had this butter knife or something like that, and he flexed, and the officer immediately fires and kills him. And I'm watching this, and my first reaction, this is just me. And again, I don't understand. I won't say I understand police training and all of that. But what I didn't understand was if I'm a cop and I got a partner and I'm getting out of a car, okay, and the man is standing in front of me, there are other people, there are not other people around this way, and he's holding a butter knife, and I know I got a gun. So I know I have a lethal weapon. I can take this person out. I guess if I'm gonna have a conversation with homeboy, I'm probably, this is just me, I'm gonna step to the back of the car, put the car between me and him. We're gonna talk over the car. And when I see these officers, they jump in front of the car, or they firing at a car that's taking off and going away. I'm sitting here going, What are you doing? And the DOJ's own report shows you do not fire at a fleeing car. You don't do that because you don't know who you can hit. You don't know if you hit them, they run to somebody else. Matter of fact, it's a black kid, 26-year-old black photographer in DC. He's dead because the DC police were chasing a car. That car, this brother was on his way to an assignment, on his way to church. Car slams into him, he's dead because they were pursuing him. And so it's just mind-boggling sometimes when you go, what were you thinking when you know you have the lethal weapon in your hand and that person does it?
That's right.
And that's the rules of most. That's the law enforcement rules. One, the reason why, because people used to just chase cars all the time. And cars speeding down the street, hit people, kill people, children, grown, elderly, by the speed. You don't chase them, nor do you shoot at them because you don't know who is on the other side of that vehicle that you may hit or kill or harm. So that's why the rules are in place. You don't shoot at a fleeing vehicle. It got a tag. You catch it later. You don't chase them. We had that here in Philadelphia. I think his name was, correct me if I'm wrong, Dante Dawson, where the cop stood on the hood and shot down the car because he was in the car. Didn't make a move, nothing, just was in the car. The rules, because I was a police officer for 27 years, the rules was if a person is in the car and won't come out, that become a barricaded person.
That's
Get
right.
everybody in here to work it out.
That's right. That's right.
So you don't stand on top of a car and shoot down into a car. You don't shoot at a fleeing vehicle. See, these non-trained individuals, and they said he had 11 years. Then what was he doing for 11 years? On the border patrol? You don't know how to react to people in communities or urban cities. You don't know. But you throw them out here and they just start shooting? No. The rules state for most common sense law enforcement agencies. Now, the ones that don't, they can correct me, but I know being a cop for 27 years, that was the rule for us. And that's the rules for my deputy sheriffs here in this city. That's what we don't do.
Well, it also reminds me when you have these cases, and we just did one the other day, this story out of Florida, black man, he's walking away back to the officers, has his hands up, he's not reaching for anything, shoot him in the back, kill him. Same thing. And you're like, so you're justified, the person's walking away. This is the stuff that we have to deal with. And I do hope, I hope that what this murder of Renee Good does, it wakes up these complacent people who have given these law enforcement folks the benefit of the doubt. And you're absolutely right. And I've said it for a long time. And I've talked to way too many folks in Noble who have called for accountability. That when you got cops who do the right thing, hey, you praise them, you support them, you pay raises and all that good stuff. But we know for a fact you got some folks who are thugs, who have no business with guns and badges, and they know, oh, I can shoot and kill, and all I gotta say is I fear for my life. And that's a reality. Sheriff Below, is she still with us, y'all? Did we lose her? Did we lose? What happened, y'all? Did we lose the sheriff?
Lost her.
Looks like we lost the sheriff's feed. I want to thank her for coming on the show. Sheriff, I appreciate it. Thank you for your strong stance and your courage. We're going to go to a break. We come back. Lots more to talk about, y'all, on today's show. Bishop William Barber, we're going to talk about an upcoming event happening in February when it comes to protesting, it comes to getting people active when it comes to the right to vote. We're going to talk about the economy, how it is floundering under Donald Trump. Plus, Congresswoman Ayanna Pressley and Congresswoman Summer Lee, they were not holding back in a couple of hearings on Capitol Hill. We're going to show you that as well. Lots to show you right here. Roland Martin Unfiltered on the Black Star Network. Support the work that we do. Join our Bring the Funk fan club. You want to contribute, use the Cash App, use the Stripe QR code. You see it right here. The QR code, you use it for credit cards as well. PayPal is R Martin Unfiltered. Venmo is RM Unfiltered. Zelle, rolling at RolandSMartin.com, Roland at RolandMartinUnfiltered.com. Checks and money ordered. Make it payable to P.O. Roland Martin Unfiltered, mail to P.O. Box 57196, Washington, D.C., 20037, that's 0196. Back in a moment.
Coming up on the next Black Table, a conversation with Professor Howard W. French on his new book, Born in Blackness, covering 600 years of global African history and helping us understand how the world we know today is a gift from Black people.
There could have been no West without Africa and Africa.
That's on the next Black Table with me, Greg Carr, only on the Black Star Network.
If in this country right now, you have people get up in the morning and the only thing they can think about is how many people they can hurt, and they got the power, that's the time for mourning.
For better or worse, what makes America special, it's that legal system that's supposed to protect minorities from the tyranny of the majority.
We are at a point of a moral emergency. We must raise a voice of outrage. We must raise a voice of compassion. And we must raise a voice of unity.
We are not in a crisis of party versus party. We are in a crisis of civilization, a human rights crisis, and a crisis of democracy itself. And guess what? You've been chosen to make sure that those that would destroy, those that would hate, don't have the final say, and they don't ultimately win.
I'm Risa Colbert, and you're watching the Black Star Network.
So, folks, I saw this video, and there was this Uber driver, Ahmed bin Hassan, who got into this verbal altercation with some federal law enforcement officers. Man, he was giving them the business. And so I just want y'all to see how my man, I want y'all to play the 755 version, y'all. But he was straight up just letting them have it. Watch this.
What's up, officer?
How's it going?
Where we at?
Where what?
Where are we at?
Where are we at?
Yeah, can you tell them this location? What are we doing here?
You can feel free.
I'm just chilling at my job in the Uber, and this lady just pulls over, and she's like, are you a U.S. citizen? In a parking lot at work. That's the officer lady. And they just shot somebody right now in Minnesota. Imagine that. Are we in Germany? Why are you guys doing this?
You tell me, sir.
Why are you guys going around just asking people like at work whether they're U.S. citizens or not? Are you guys not supposed to be patrolling the border?
Do you want to answer the question or not?
Why would I answer you? Where's your warrant?
We're running a plate.
Run your plates. You do whatever you want.
You can record. Feel free.
Yeah. That's kind of crazy though, right? Like you guys leave the border and go harass people based on their skin color? Ain't that a shame? Are you doing this to everybody or it's just black people? Come on now, you know what it is. And you got a GoPro.
Yes. You're recording, I'm recording.
Is that work issued?
Yes.
Are you sure?
Yes.
They're giving you guys GoPros? What happened to the police body cameras?
I don't have a body camera.
This one you can delete the video and make your own stuff. You know that, right?
How do you know?
Because it's not going to a server. It's going to a little SD card or something. You guys just murdered somebody in cold blood in this city today, and God brought you guys to me at work. I'm literally working here, and you guys are literally impeding my income, asking me retarded questions. You know, I've been sitting here since 10 a.m. waiting for a ride, and right now I'm getting rides. And if I leave, I'm afraid you motherfuckers might just shoot me.
Are you a U.S. citizen, sir?
Why would I answer you?
Because if you're not a citizen of this country, you have to have your immigration.
Why would I not be a citizen of this country, man?
What a ridiculous question. Why would I have an immigration?
Are you a citizen? Are you a dude? Listen, I'm here working. You're working too, right? So go. It says U.S. Border Patrol. This is not the border. Go to the Canada border or the Mexico border. I'm working, dude.
If you were from this country,
What do you mean? What do you mean if I'm from this country?
I could hear you don't have the same accent as me. That's why I'm.
Oh, so you're going by accents now? Is that what it is?
Where were you born?
Is that accents? Have you heard the Israeli accent? Have you heard the European accent? It's garbage. It's retarded, dude. You going by accents? Mr. Mills. Where are you from, Mr. Mills, with your big ass body? Where you from? Yeah, all of these other motherfuckers small, man. Look at your officers. Hey, the famous guy. I've seen this guy on TikTok. Look at it. He got gas canisters and shit. What's up, officer? What's going on? How you doing?
I have better than I deserve.
Man, let me step out, man.
That was wild. And because that was a shorter version, right? Play me some of the other one. Give me some of the other one. 2 videos. I think that was the almost 3-minute one. Play the other one.
What's up, officer?
How's it going?
Where we at?
Where what?
Where are we at?
Where are we at?
Yeah, can you tell them this location? What are we doing here?
You can feel free.
I'm
just come on out. Come on. There you go. So y'all let me know what happens with that. First of all, man, I love he was giving their ass the business. He was like, man, I ain't giving up nothing. He was just ripping them.
I loved it. And I love that he was recording, and I love that he called the guy out on, you know, the xenophobia basically behind, oh, your accent is different than mine, therefore I'm going to conclude you're not an American citizen. Not to mention there's a whole naturalization process. I mean, it's crazy how they're going around, and it's very interesting that he talked about them not being anywhere near the border, because what I think a lot of people are kind of conflating these days is like Border Patrol does have expanded authority, right? I think it's like 100 miles from the border or 50 miles from the border, one of those two, where there is a relaxation of civil rights. But the point is, past that point, they're not patrolling the border. So the idea that they would be like a supplemental immigration force, and he's calling them out like, we're not anywhere near the border, go back to Canada or go to Mexico. I love that, because I think a lot of times what happens with citizens is if they don't know the distinctions between certain officers, certain authorities, certain jurisdictions, they may acquiesce just because the person's in a uniform when that person doesn't have any right to order them out or order them to do anything. And I like that this brother stood strong. And a lot of times when this happens, officers get frustrated because they're used to people immediately acquiescing. But he was one of the ones that brought the smoke and said, nah, man, you don't know what you're talking about. And clearly he was able to post this. So presumably he's not in custody. He didn't have anything happen. And I'm glad that he stood up the way he did.
Yeah. And I mean, for me, straight up, hey, everybody got to have their cameras out. You can't trust these people at all, Candace, at all.
Really key about that video is when he asked her, you know, why are you stopping me? And she said, I don't know. Why are we? I mean, come on. Even she didn't know the reason why and didn't have a justification as to why she was stopping. There was no probable cause. There was no warrant. There were no constitutional guidelines that she could even say anything about. And to Matt's point, yeah, you're on Border Patrol. What are you doing here in this Uber parking lot where I'm about to go get a ride, but I'm afraid I'm going to lose my life? So even if it does move to the point of, hey, you know what, we do have reasonable suspicion, then he also has the right to remain silent. And these are things that it sounds like he knew and understood that they did not know and did not understand. So it's important to have your camera, as you said, and it's important to know the law. It's important to understand when you cannot be stopped, because as we saw and we've heard about that training, 47 days, we heard the sheriff talking about what went into Mr. Ross, who killed who killed the woman in Minnesota. That's not enough. They probably don't know what they're doing. You probably know the law better than they do if you are somebody on the other side of an ICE officer agent.
Yeah, Michael, they love demanding paperwork, demanding ID, and asking. I love it when he said, "Oh, my accent." You know, the Israelis have accents too.
Is you go back to Supreme Court, go back to Brett Kavanaugh, the Kavanaugh stops, and you have the Supreme Court saying you can use race as a pretext to stop people, right? When in 2023, they ruled that you couldn't use affirmative action in college admissions. Okay, so what you see here now, my question would be, well, what about Elon Musk's accent? Because Elon Musk's brother admitted at one point they were undocumented immigrants here in this country. Would you stop somebody with Elon Musk's accent, or would you give him a pass because he's white? So all this is the fear, the browning of America, and we see the weaponization of ICE to inflict terror upon communities. And you have to connect what's taking place right now in Minnesota, in Minneapolis, and the killing of Renee Good, 4/10 of a mile away from where George Floyd was killed. You have to connect that to the video from Nick Shirley right around Christmas, right after Christmas, right? Going to those child care centers most of them ran by Somali immigrants, things of this nature. And people in the Republicans in the state legislature in Minnesota feeding that information to Nick Shirley. And because of those videos going viral and the white supremacists in the White House seizing upon that, then they flood Minneapolis, Minnesota with ICE agents. And you see this unfolding here. So this is an example how elections have consequences. This is straight out of Project 2025. Okay. And we see that the big ass ugly bill gave an unprecedented amount of money to Homeland Security to do this. But going back to the conversation with the sheriff, under the Obama administration, the 2 terms of Obama, they deported 3.1 million undocumented immigrants, but they didn't terrorize communities doing this. So there's a right way to do it, but this is totally the wrong way.
Well, they are showing us exactly who they are. Now, while those things are happening, our economy is going straight to hell. 2025 absolutely was an awful economic year. And all of you idiots who said Donald Trump was going to be great for the economy, way better than Vice President Kamala Harris, you probably feel real stupid right now because we know that was an absolute lie, and so let's break down what's happened with the economy. Morgan Harper joins us right now. Morgan can walk us through. She's the Director of Policy and Advocacy for the American Economic Liberties Project. And Morgan, they have been trying their best to delay these numbers. They don't want us to see it. All of a sudden, we now realizing, guess what? Manufacturing Trump. I'm bringing it back. No, you're not. It sucked. We're seeing how across the board we've seen anemic loss. And don't you remember when we would have 150 or 180 or 200,000 job creation and Fox News would be going, oh my God, this is soft. This is awful. But all these downward revisions that we have seen now shows how awful this Trump economy is.
Yeah, it's really something, Roland. I mean, the top line figures that we have now that are estimates of what happened throughout all of 2025 are indicating that there were only about 500,000 jobs created for the whole year. To compare, under President Biden's last year in 2024 is about 2 million, right? So that's a huge difference. And then when we're breaking it down month by month, you're exactly right that we're only having like 50,000 jobs that are being estimated that were created this past December. Revisions down, still in the tens of thousands of jobs for November. And so there's nothing like robust job growth going on here. And again, and this is something that we've talked about before, where is the job growth that is occurring, even if it's very limited, where is it coming from? It continues to be things like social assistance, healthcare, hardly a booming business environment that's just suggesting a ton of innovation and entrepreneurship is happening. I think as one a bit of coverage that I saw today was talking about that's really just like demographic change. People are aging, they need more support. That's where you are going to see more of those healthcare jobs tend to come from, regardless of what's happening elsewhere in the economy. The other thing that is important to note in these numbers as a sign of how all is not well, despite what the White House might be trying to spin, is those that are unemployed. Unemployment is up overall from where we were at this point last year, even though there's a slight downturn in terms of the exact number from this past month. But overall, unemployment is up year over year, and particularly Black unemployment is much, much higher from this point last year. And those that are unemployed, they're staying unemployed longer. And that is particularly disconcerting, meaning like you're looking for a job, you're not able to find one, so you're going to stay as part of that official statistic for longer. And that's a problem, as we know. I mean, most of us are living paycheck to paycheck. The longer that you don't have one of those, then other ripple effects that are happening throughout your life, just in like a real micro way. And then the other thing that I would note is just there is this dichotomy between what the White House is saying. I thought it was particularly interesting in a lot of their official messaging today, just how far they're having to reach for that positive spin now. You have the head of the Council of Economic Advisors, Kevin Hassett, his go-to talking point today was, oh, but those that have manufacturing jobs, they're getting paid a lot more. And it's like, well, that's interesting because like you were noting, Roland, we've seen nothing but manufacturing job losses. So I guess his point is if you happen to be one of the few people that still has a manufacturing job, that is surely not a new one that's been created this year because their policies have not resulted in that, well, then maybe you're making a bit more money and that's great. But the rest of the economy is not really seeing any of those gains. And again, there just has not been that follow through on this promise of bringing American manufacturing back, inspiring a new wave of innovation. Nothing in these numbers suggests that that's actually occurring.
Muted.
I love all the spin they've been doing. And in fact, I came across this video. I'm gonna try to find it. Scott Bessent, they were at this event and this woman came up and said to them point blank, guess what? My things have sucked when it comes to my life, my business because of these tariffs. And he was sitting kind of like, uh-oh. And it's kind of like, yeah, try to tell you.
Yeah, I mean, that's the important point here is they're going to try to take this little bit of the official data that's coming out of these numbers. And I thought, of course, interesting again that the president does not care about the rules around any of this. He's not supposed to talk about any of this data before the official release so that it doesn't inappropriately influence the market investors. They did that anyway because they are probably so concerned about how, these numbers were not suggesting anything positive or, aligning with what they claim they're accomplishing here. And people are not having to, but are able to confront that imaginary picture that they're trying to paint with reality. And yeah, I mean, small business, I'm sure all of us where we're all living, I know I have had these conversations in Columbus of like, oh yeah, business owner used to carry that, can't carry that anymore. Tariffs, it's just too expensive. Folks that are having to close up shop altogether. And more importantly, and that I think this is the widespread type of impact, is just that uncertainty that people don't know exactly what's going to happen. And so they're not able to move or invest in any particular way. And, and the other risk I would point to here, and this was starting to be covered a bit more in some of the data today around like the impacts of AI. We all know, AI is afoot. It's going to, lead to some gains in productivity in a lot of working environments. It is, definitely having an impact in some of the job numbers. Just, some professional services are no longer going to need as many people if they're using, AI software and such. And so, but we're not able to really parse out what's the what there if we have a government that's injecting all of this unnecessary uncertainty while we have to kind of grapple with this technology that is there that is having an impact, that we need to figure out what exactly that is, so that government can play a better role in leveling things off to make sure that we're all, staying as stable as possible. I think that's a risk that, we're not always talking. We certainly, you and I haven't been talking about every month, but it's something for us to continue to draw attention to, in that AI conversation and how this connects to the jobs data.
Questions from our panel. Let me start with you, Michael.
All right, Morgan, you just hit on one of the questions that I had dealing with artificial intelligence and eliminating jobs. The other question that I had is when we look at, for instance, September 2024, Goldman Sachs put out a statement. They analyzed both Trump and Kamala Harris's economic plans, and they said that Kamala Harris's plans would give the biggest boost to the economy, and they talked about how Trump's proposed tariffs on imports and tighter immigration policies would really destroy the economy. What feedback are you hearing from African Americans specifically on how they are trying to navigate throughout all this? We're looking at unprecedented unemployment for African Americans in the past few years. We're looking at energy prices up 13%, beef prices up, coffee, et cetera. What are you hearing from African Americans on the ground?
Well, I think it's interesting because, a lot of us probably don't have the expectation that the government's always going to be working in our best interests, I would say, as a community. And so I think in certain ways, we're kind of prepared to be surprised and the unexpected in a certain way. So psychologically, maybe that puts us in a slightly better position than the average person that is used to maybe living with that illusion or expectation that somebody's going to be taking care of you, looking out for you. That being said, I'm hearing that people think what's going on is crazy and that there is no way to make this all add up. So, like you're saying, Mike, we have, the uncertainty around tariffs, that those costs are having to be passed on certain goods and all sorts of businesses that we're going to based on how this administration chose to implement tariffs. That is not inevitability, right? There is a version of doing better trade policy, tariff policy that would not go like this. That is not what they decided to do. In addition to some things that are never going to be reflected in this data that we're talking about, like energy costs, like utility prices. And I think the important point here is to emphasize, none of this is inevitable. None of this is necessary. Even when we're talking about AI, right? We're kind of just hearing AI, it's happening. We got to just deal with it. It's well, no, we have a government that can pass laws that kind of decides the rules of the road, even for something like an innovative technology, like how that's actually going to be playing out in our economy and our society. But unfortunately, that is not what this government's trying to do. I think the other thing I would note is, when we're looking at, I don't have all the ins and outs of exactly what Kamala Harris was proposing, but I can guarantee you that there were some elements of it that were also looking at what we call the supply side of things. So, it's interesting, this proposal that's come up from Trump, that you all might have seen some coverage of around buying up more of these mortgage-backed securities, bonds to try to lower interest rates. And then that's going to solve the housing crisis. This is their big housing plan. It's well, okay, but y'all aren't doing anything to address actually what's going to be necessary to build housing. So similar to the job market, they're doing all these things. They're oh, we're going to, manufacturing, and we're going to keep, supporting all these businesses. So it's we're gonna cut back on immigration, but you're not doing anything to address the supply side here. So it's not that you don't want to do tariffs at all. It's not that a lot of us don't care about having better immigration policy. I think a lot of us do. But if you're gonna put in these real, extreme approaches, and then you don't do anything on that supply side to, train people up or make sure that we're impacting the number of people that are available to take on any jobs that are being created, or incentivize businesses to want to create those jobs, well, then you are just setting people up for absolute devastation. And I do think that, that's what I'm hearing from a lot of people, that they're kind of worried that's where we're headed. And there's not a lot of ways to maneuver to protect yourself in that environment.
Mm-hmm. All right, thanks.
Candace.
So there are a lot of people who graduate these days with computer science degrees, and they're so behind because technologies move so fast. By the time they get a job or not get a job, they're just behind. So I'm wondering, for people who are, looking into areas to go to in terms of studying, where are the hot jobs coming in 3 to 4 years? What will a good degree look like? Because it certainly isn't computer science. I mean, there's so many statistics and headlines out there about that, but where do folks go?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a great question. And, I've been, and certainly not a workforce expert or anything like that, but I have been hearing the same covers that you're talking about with the computer science degrees, now being somewhat less necessary, less in demand just based on the advances in technology. And more than anything, we are going to need people that do have critical thinking skills and an ability to still be able to write and work through complex problems and deal with lots of different kinds of people, something we would call like a liberal arts education. And it's out of vogue in this administration and not just this administration, I mean, it's a movement across the country that's kind of, pushing back on those. But I do think that there continues to be a need to invest in people, regardless of what circumstances you might be born into, if they want to pursue an education, higher education, that pathway is available to them without getting in a bunch of debt. That being said, completely support and do think, and this is something we were seeing a lot under the last administration, under the Biden administration, an investment in trades. And if we, have, the types of policies that were happening under the Inflation Reduction Act, incentivizing solar investment in solar energy that then requires people to have the training to be able to install that in building trades. That is going to continue to be necessary. There's a shortage of people that have the skill set to be able to just be plumbers and be electricians and have some of these, skills that are more in that trades category. But that requires a government investment to make sure that people have those resources. And this is another thing I've heard on the ground. I mean, and it's been very, very hard to hear. Some of these job training programs that were getting that funding through the big federal legislation just immediately disappeared, with all the Doge business. And then they cannot afford to put on those programs. I've heard from folks in Columbus that that's happening too. So, you all talk about it. We all talk about it a lot. Elections matter. We need to get things back on under control, on track with just, maybe we don't all agree on exactly what the solutions are, but we need to have people in these positions that are even trying to figure out and understand what the problem is to explore what those solutions could be.
Thank you.
Well, the election, I think, is going to be a huge issue comes the midterm elections in November. And if Democrats, they want to regain the House, they should be hammering these folks by saying, guess what? You let Donald Trump do whatever he wants to do on tariffs. Now you see the problem when, in fact, Congress actually can be controlling tariffs. And so the GOP, you put your fate in the hands of Trump, you're going to suffer the consequences. And so it had better be a strong economic message. But not just that, Morgan. What Democrats also have to be saying is, what are we going to do when we regain power? It can't just be they suck.
Completely. And, I think we have a great example from this week, Roland, with, Trump coming out saying he wanted to ban institutional investors from buying up, single family homes across the country. Right. So this is like, private equity, large corporations being able to dominate regional housing markets.
Which, of course, that was one of the ideas of Vice President Kamala Harris.
Yes, and there have been a couple of bills introduced by Raphael Warnock and other Democratic senators.
And in fact, Democrats tried to do that last year, and Republicans voted against it.
Yes, but the point I agree. The point I was going to make though is, and I think we can agree on this, that is not something though that every Democrat across the board was willing to talk about. Even we're talking about something like taking on private equity and some of the impacts that it's having in the economy. Even as recently as a couple of years ago, I think that was a controversial thing that some people are like, that's a little too much. I don't want to go that far. And I think we should all take as like a very clear direction that we have, Trump that's coming out here, even if it's not sincere, even if he doesn't follow through, even if some Democrats were talking about before, that there is no reason to hold back on any front with ideas that we think are going to have an impact that is for the good for our community, for this country. We should not be afraid. We should not be timid. We got to go for the absolute jugular here as we're looking ahead to 26 and 28.
I agree 100%. Morgan, always great to see you. Thanks a lot.
Thanks for having me.
Folks, when we come back, headlines with Brittany Noble. We'll also be chatting with Bishop William Barber about the effort to get folks to understand why voting in every election this year is critically important to our future. You're watching Roland Martin Unfiltered right here on the Black Star Network.
They said the quiet part out loud. Black votes are a threat, so they erased them. After the Supreme Court gutted the Voting Rights Act in 2013, Republican legislatures moved fast. New voter ID laws, polling place shutdowns, purges of black voters from the rolls. Trump's Justice Department didn't stop it, they joined in. In 2018, his DOJ backed Ohio's voter purge system, a scheme that disproportionately erased black voters. Their goal, erase black votes and political power. Yeah, that happened. These are the kinds of stories that we cover every day on Roland Martin Unfiltered. Subscribe on YouTube and download the Black Star Network app. Support fact-based independent journalism that centers African Americans and the issues that matter to our community.
If in this country right now, you have people get up in the morning and the only thing they can think about is how many people they can hurt, and they got the power, that's the time for mourning.
For better or worse, what makes America special, it's that legal system that's supposed to protect minorities from the tyranny of the majority.
We are at a point of a moral emergency. We must raise a voice of outrage. We must raise a voice of compassion. And we must raise a voice of unity.
We are not in a crisis of party versus party. We are in a crisis of civilization, a human rights crisis, and a crisis of democracy itself. And guess what? You've been chosen to make sure that those that would destroy, those that would hate, don't have the final say, and they don't ultimately win.
At the end of the Selma to Montgomery March in 1965, Dr. King stood in front of the Alabama State House and told 25,000 Americans that the greatest threat to the greedy oligarchy is when poor blacks and poor whites and others mobilize together and form a voting bloc that can fundamentally shift the economic architecture of our nation. In America today, we have fewer voting right protections than we did when the Voting Rights Act was passed in 1965. And state legislatures have abused their power to try to pick their voters rather than let the voters pick their legislators. Meanwhile, every day people are suffering while the greedy get richer and richer. Dr. King was right, and many others were right. The billionaires who think they can buy our politicians are afraid of people coming together across dividing lines and building power together. In 2013 and 2014, we together in this state built out the Moral Monday movement. And in 2014, more than 80,000 people showed up in Raleigh for a mass people's assembly. We mobilized our power. We mobilized our vision. We did not continue to just resist what others were doing. We claimed the world that we wanted, the society that we wanted. And what we did energized. It was not partisan, it was principled. Here we are again now in 2026. And it's time to love forward together and mobilize. This is our Selma moment. And we need everybody, regardless of your race, your creed, your color, your religion, your sexuality, whoever you are. If you love voting rights for all, if you love abolishing poverty and bringing into reality living wage, if you love health care for all, if you love and grace and mercy and do not want to buy into the religious nationalism of hate and meanness and a lack of empathy, if you want to love forward together, welcoming immigrants rather than suffering ICE raids, if you love the environment and want to see it cared for rather than the polluters taking over, if you love fully supported public education, if you want to love, not hate, and to have peace and not war, to stand against unchecked militarization and the militarization of our cities, then it is time to come together and mobilize our power and our passion for justice, then we now are in a moment where we must move from resistance to loving forward and mobilizing our power. So, from February 11th through the 14th, North Carolinians are going to be walking and marching and caravanning from Wilson to Raleigh. And on Saturday, February 14th, Valentine's Day, we will hold a massive People's Assembly for a moral agenda in Raleigh, North Carolina, saying it is time to love forward together. We are marching from a district that MAGA extremists, because of a call from President Trump, decided to gerrymander the 1st Congressional District, take it away from the people. And we are inviting all defenders of democracy and champions of the common good to meet us in Raleigh on February 14th to reclaim a moral agenda, an agenda for going forward, to pursue the society and the democracy that we want, not only for ourselves, but for our children's children. For somebody's been hurting our people, and it's gone on far too long, and we won't be quiet anymore. We will love forward together.
Oh, joining us right now is Bishop William Barber with Repairs of the Breach, Poor People's Campaign. Bishop, always glad to have you. Happy New Year, frat. This is taking place in North Carolina, but this is really a national call.
It is, Roland. Thank you for having me, and glad to be here. I'm at a place I can't be on the line, but I'm glad to be with you. We must nationalize state movements. I don't know how many times I can say that. We need to be rallying the people in our states, and it doesn't even have to be partisan. It can be principled, and mobilize in a way around what we stand for. What is it that you stand for, and that you will stand for it, regardless of what we've talked enough. We have to do the critique, but resistance only gets you so far. The Bible says you have to write the vision for people to run, and you have to write it for people to mobilize. And we have to get people to grab their passion and say, I'm fighting now, not just who I'm against, but what I'm for. And Roland, the reality is, I can talk all day. It's one of the reasons I'm going home. I've been out in the nation, but going home to nationalize this. In North Carolina in 2025, Trump won by 180,000 votes, 1,830 votes per county. Over 300,000 Black folk that were registered and had voted infrequently didn't vote. Over 1.7 million poor and low-wage people who had voted were registered but voted infrequently and didn't vote. And you look at these numbers in Georgia, Trump wins by a little over 100,000 votes, but over 300,000, 400,000 African Americans didn't vote. Over 2 million poor and low-wage people who had infrequently voted and tended to vote progressive did not vote. And people are saying, what you ask them why, and they say, nobody talked to us. Nobody spoke to our passion. I don't totally agree with that, but my point is, there comes a time when you can't just say what Goliath is doing. You have to decide it's time to take the mic from Goliath and say what you stand for and what rocks you stand on, if you will, Roland. And that's why we're going from, the last straw was for them to get this is how it went down. Trump called our state, MAGA, and told them, take this district, first Congressional District, predominantly Black. And they said, okay, and went down and redistricted it. But the numbers they use, Roland, they are based on 49% turnout or less. And in that same district, Trump won by 11,000 votes, but the hundreds of thousands of folks didn't vote at all in that district. And we're saying to folks that you can't keep just resisting and talking about what is it we are fighting for. 3 days we marched from Wilson to Raleigh, and then a massive. And lastly, you know this, it's not just a rally. People are going to get that day
on live
Mhm.
stream. There were 7 things to do what you and I call micro organizing. Back
That's
at
right.
Yeah.
Well, here's a perfect example. I'm showing right now. This was when we were in Austin, and this is a drone shot we had, and it was a multi-day march to the state capitol, and you were there. Beto O'Rourke was out there. Reverend Jesse Jackson Sr. was out there, and the thing that that so this was July 2021. So here we sit, January 2026. We saw what Texas did, stealing 5 seats. We saw how they passed all of these voting laws. And I remember there were people who were then saying, "All right, man, y'all sitting here, you're doing this march." But as we said, we talk about micro to macro. The problem with so many of these other folk out here, they want to have one big old rally, get lots of attention, and then you go, okay, well, what the hell you do? What's next? And all I've heard in the past year, Bishop, and you and I talk about this all the time. I've heard more people say, "Hey, man, who's doing something? We're waiting. We're ready to go. We're ready to do this thing." And the problem is too many organizations, too many churches, too many black churches, too many civil rights groups, others. They've been non-existent. Chatting with, doing email fundraisers, and the people are saying, "Where's the plan of action to fight back?"
That's right. Where's the plan of action, and what is it that we're fighting for, and how are we mobilizing so that there's a movement, not just a moment? When we went to Texas, as you remember, about 100 folks started with us, but thousands showed up. Now, we encourage people, you and I, to keep doing it, right? To keep going, build it out. Folks said we've never seen this many people come to the State House at one time. We said, if you keep moving and keep mobilizing. Now let's go from that to the fact that you've got 3 million poor and low-wage folk infrequent voters. Go after them, but you got to go after them with talking to them and real policies. The problem is, Roland, too often we're leaving folk out. And I'm saying to politicians, you can't just run this year on who you're against. What are you for? What's going to happen if you get to be the governor or the senator or whatever? What's going to happen in the first 50 days? What are you going to make happen? And all of us, the organizations, if you've been waiting to do something, I mean, when the big, bad, deadly, ugly, destructive bill, Roland, you were there. Some of us, white and black and other, went to D.C. and made a call. Come now. Come to the rotunda now. They arrested us. I know folks saw it because millions of people saw it online. But do you know some folk were doing something else? I don't know what they were doing. And then after it was over, they said, we didn't know. Now, there's a certain part at which you can't claim ignorance, But let's just say folk didn't. Okay, here we are now, 22 million people. 20 million people are losing health care. That's who you got to organize. That's the power. People are losing food stamps. That's who we must mobilize. So our effort, and I'm saying, Roland, every state ought to have this. And preachers, hear me. You ought to do this in your state. You ought to get thousands and thousands of people, have a massive group, but not just for a day. And then you ought to lay out your plan for micro mobilizing and organizing and civic engagement and voter push in each county. And Roland, you know why we're doing February 11th, 12th, and 13th? It's not just because it's Valentine's Day. It's the first week of early voting, same-day registration. So we're going to be
So
out there.
that's called having a reason, having a rationale in terms of what you're doing, and not just gathering, because you meet and you're pushing people towards something to do something. Because that's when early voting starts in Texas for the March 6th primary.
That's it. And I would love it. We're trying to model. It would be an amazing, if there are any folk from Texas right now and preachers down there, you all could do this. Go join us. Do one the same weekend. You can do it and you could do this in 3 weeks. Bayard Rustin didn't have 6 weeks. maybe 8 weeks at the most, to pull off the March on Washington. You can't, what if Texas decided after all of this craziness that you were going to mobilize, and let's say you didn't march 3 days, but you did one somewhere and massively come on February, but your reason is to gin up the energy and the power of people turning out for early voting. In Texas, do you all have same-day registration, Roland? I don't know if
We
Texas
do not
does.
have, not in Texas.
Right. That's right. But see, we do. So what we're saying to folks, while we're marching, the church we're marching from, by the way, is on Martin Luther King Boulevard, St. James Christian Church. My wife's the pastor. The church we're going to end up at is Pullen Memorial Church, which has been a progressive white congregation on the 13th. But what we're saying to folks is the 12th, the 13th, the 14th are all same-day registration early voting. So while we're walking, you march to the polls, and you don't even have to be registered. All you have to do is go and register and vote. And then after that rally, when we really ginned up and taken over the news media and got people's consciousness awakened and gotten people saying, I know what I'm loving, I know what I'm fighting for, they will have another 3 to 4 weeks to push it out. And we're going to break through so that the pundits are going to have to say, wait a minute, we normally don't get this kind of turnout in midterm elections. And that's when we start making a difference, when we start upsetting these calculations.
To your point, I'm playing right now a video when we were with y'all in June. And it was very interesting. It's very interesting. Again, the whole point there. And this is the thing that still, to your point, would drive me crazy. Y'all invited so many other people. This was in June. The whole point was to build upon that, and y'all keep doing the work. And you can do all you can do is all you can do. But you got so many other folk who've been sitting on the sidelines and just sort of, and I guess they're gonna wake up come September and October. And what I have been saying to people repeatedly is, y'all, this ain't how this thing works. You now have to begin to reach people a lot earlier. This is now January. You have to be now planting the seed in January. And you got to till the soil. You got to water that thing in February and March. And they may not vote in the primary, but then you got April and May and June and July and August and September and October. If you do that, you've now spent 7-8 months, what I call educate, enlighten, inform, and engage. And when you do that, the 3 E's in the I, you do that, now all of a sudden you built the resonance, and now people know you've connected the dots. You've talked about healthcare, you've talked about SNAP benefits, you've talked about job creation, you talked about a living wage, and now you can challenge the candidates. Because look, we want to hold these town halls for the folk who run. Roy Cooper,
that's right.
We want to have a town hall with him on the Black Star Network in North Carolina, Ossoff in Georgia, Crockett in Texas, the rest of these people. But that's what has to happen.
And Roland, and if you do that, you as you said, you actually push to the politicians to have courage and to say what they're for, not just what they're against. And so the other part of what we're doing, we've been in the 1st Congressional District since they did what they did. We filed a suit challenging it as racism, but we also are not in those districts having town halls, all those counties down east. And folks said, well, you need to wait till after Christmas. We said, why? Why did you all wait till after a holiday? We went in Christmas. We're going to do, as a part of this gathering, a 7-stop tour across North Carolina leading up to this, ginning people up, educating people, making sure they know what's going on, doing nonpartisan voter guides that tell on people. We don't tell you who to vote for, but we can tell on them. And then you have to look at it and say, well, I love this, but I don't like this. But you got to do this work early and hard. If we mess around and say, what we're going to do is have a remember March on Washington, wait all the way till August. Now that's after the summer. Then try to gin that out in September and October. I'm not saying some of that won't help, but it's why. And why take it all the way to DC
when you can do it in these states
Right.
and massively in the states. I don't know why we can't get this. DC changed from Birmingham up, from Alabama up,
Right.
Jackson up, from Montgomery up, from Selma up, not from DC down. And that was where the effort. I was looking the other day, Roland, and I challenged for last thing I'll say. I went back and read the speech that you and I often read, which is the speech Dr. King gave at the State House at the end of the Selma to Montgomery March, when they actually told him that he was going to get shot. They told him don't do that speech, but he did it anyway, and he did it long. I mean, it was longer than the march. Enormously Never Again, which we call I Have a Dream. It was like 45 minutes. But in that speech, he makes the point and says, the work that has been done across this nation grew out of the work done in three places: Birmingham, Selma, and Montgomery. And I thought about that, Roland. Yes, the movement's known all across the world, but Doc's primary focus was Alabama and Georgia. Now he did. You see what I'm saying? He made sure that he did hard work. We often talk about Doc as a speaker, and we try to isolate him as an individual. But no. Go back. Birmingham, Montgomery, Selma, right? Without those three things he says in those speeches, they would not have built the models and the basis. And what other folk did was they picked up what they saw. So I'm saying to folk, you don't have to wait. Right now, take this model in North Carolina. What if a 50 or 100 pastors decide to do this in Texas and then in Georgia? Do your state and look at these numbers. If you gin up 10% of just black folk who didn't engage in the last election, and then gin up 10% of poor and low wage people that didn't engage around an election, you can flip almost any state, even these southern states, in particular in the at-large elections.
Questions for my panel. Michael, you first.
All right, Reverend William Barber, I think this is fantastic. And my question to you is, for some of the people who are with you in this movement now, they say, yes, brother, we get it, we're with you, but they didn't vote in November 2024 election. What are some of the driving issues that cause them to realize, okay, we have to be engaged now? What are some of the driving issues or the reasons that cause them to say, okay, we get it now?
Well, let me say a couple of things. I'm glad you raised that question, because I just got out of a 3-hour session yesterday. You know, I'm like Roland, I'm a fact person, I'm a numbers person. So
me too.
We touched 11 million poor and low wage voters 3 times during the last election, a nonpartisan way, but in a very powerful way. We just had our statisticians and our meet with us, our team, to go over those numbers last week and then yesterday. And we found out that in the places where we were, and we know that they clicked on our text, or they played, because we sent people a video, a nonpartisan report card, and a text message, that there was no less than an 8% uptick among those folk who were infrequent voters. Now, part of the issue is, if we'd had more resources, we could have done it more, because the extremists are hitting their people 12 times.
Right.
See, there's been that we too often, and the voters we were going after, a lot of people, so-called progressive folk, they ignore them. That's one of the reasons people don't vote. We did a study and they said nobody talks to us. So you can reach them. Now, to your point though, we are in a moment now where people have been hit. Like, you remember that commercial when it says, "Thanks, I needed that." Remember you put on that? Great. Well, when these folk lost their health care and losing their SNAP, they're seeing more money put in ICE than put in public education. I mean, you start looking at this, there is a level of pain now that has people wide awake. Our job now is to connect that pain to their power and show them you don't have to be suffering like this. Doc, here's the statistic that is going to make somebody roll on your show cuss. and it's okay. The current Congress that we have in office right now is there because of a 7,000 vote margin in a time when 90 million people didn't vote. We have to start getting folk to understand that so they can own their power.
Yep.
They can own their power. And every time I say that, when I go places and say that, and then I start telling people, did you realize in your state such and such and such that folk will say, well, damn. And that's what I want them to say. I want them to understand all this nonsense about it doesn't make a difference. It's just nonsense. It's robots lying to you on social media. It's not real people who know the deal. And now in the midst of this, we've got to help folk understand if you love living wages, because right now you got a group of folk, they are thinking about nothing but firing you. If you love health care for everybody, not just access, but actual health care for everybody. If you love a society where we don't have to keep suffering ICE raids and we can welcome immigrants. If you love expanded and protected voting rights, if you love a society where the military is checked and not unchecked, and our cities aren't militarized, then you've got to turn that love and that passion into power, and you have it, and it's real and it's possible. That's what I think, my brother, it can help folk who were sitting on the sidelines no longer sit there. And lastly, what's so powerful about this is you don't even have to get 100% of the folk that sat out. In most of these places, if you do the hard numbers, and that's why I'm hoping their preacher groups meeting, I hope they got some statisticians in these meetings and not just saying cute things about Trump. The power is sometimes in as little as an 8% or 10% turnout of the folk that didn't turn out.
Absolutely. Matt.
Reverend Dr. Barber, my question for you is kind of a cousin of Michael's, and it's how much do you think there's going to be an influx, particularly of white voters who sat on the sideline, maybe who were Trump adjacent or Trump, I don't know, favorable, who didn't participate, who may now be spurred into participation because of economic issues, law enforcement issues? What is your thought on that and how that might affect either the midterms or just the ability to galvanize people actually getting out?
Well, remember Dr. King said the greatest fear of the greedy oligarchy in this country is for the masses of poor black people and poor low-wage white people and others to join together and form a voting bloc that can fundamentally shift the economic architecture. He knew that in 65, which is why Dr. King began to mobilize black and white and brown and native and others. The reality is, I'm gonna give you a stat that there's a study that came out that said 19 million Biden voters didn't vote. That voted for Biden didn't vote for Trump, didn't vote for Kamala, but voted for Trump. Didn't vote. But when they asked them, the number one reason they didn't vote was there was not a clear mentioning of how poor and low wage people would be addressed, particularly on the issue of living wages and health care. Now, that's a study that just recently came out. We found out in another study that Trump only got 51% of poor and low wage voters. That means $50,000 a year in a family of four, regardless of their white, only 51%. But that was the first time he or any other Republican got 51% of that population. But we also know that we did not see a clear pitch, particularly to folk, whether they be white people in East Kentucky or black people in the Delta, with an economic message and a message that connects racism and economics. So my point is, I think that we're in a time when a lot of folk who did not vote, as you heard me say, in 2024, 1.7 million poor and low-wage people in North Carolina didn't vote. That's black, white, whatnot. But now we've got 300,000 people who've lost their Medicaid and 300,000 who've lost their food stamp, those SNAP. If you connect that pain to this moment and people understand it, I think you're going to see a large number of folks. And the challenge for us in this moment, though, and I'll be very honest with you, is wherever we're meeting, I'm asking people to do a thorough look at the outcome from the last election. We also have to look at the fact that somewhere almost near 20% of black males voted for Trump.
Yeah.
That black vote went down in Georgia among women. We got to be honest about that too. So what we got to look at is how do we build this team that Martin knew was the very thing the oligarchs feared, and particularly how do we as black folk help build that? We don't build it with everybody, but if we build it with the right folk, we can fundamentally break through the Southern strategy. And lastly, remember what the Southern strategy said. It said we must make sure that blacks and whites never find themselves united in election. We must foster division at every turn. And in a book called A Time of Illusion, they said we might create a Frankenstein. If we do, we will lie. But in the meantime, positive polarization is the way we win. Now, if that's their strategy and has been for the last 50 years, then our strategy has to be the opposite.
Thank you.
Candace.
Reverend Dr. Barber, in terms of where the people are to go and meet them and let them know the issues, to let them know the dates, where would you say those places are? Is it the church? Is it going door to door? Are there other ways that you are finding that the people that need to get to the polls can be reached? What are those doors that you might be opening that might be new, that folks might not think of in terms of how to get folks who haven't voted out to the box?
Well, thank you so much for that question. If I might, as they say, take a scripture. After the day of Pentecost, the people were told that this is how you organize people. You start in Jerusalem, you go to Judea, you go to Samaria, and then you go to the uttermost parts of the world. So let's just say I'm a church and we've got folk that's ready to go out and mobilize. First thing you do is make sure everybody in your church is mobilized. Don't let them folk lie to you. Don't think just because you got 20,000 folks sitting up on Sunday morning that they actually turn it out. You need to have a mobilization team right inside the congregation, right? Number one. Number two, draw a 5-mile circle around your church, that building where it sits, and make that your next target. And inside of that target, go to the communities closest to your church that represent poor and low-wage voters, because the greatest potential for expanding the vote is among the 80 million poor and low-wage voters. In the last couple of elections, 30 million of them didn't vote. And you heard me say the number one reason is no one talks to them. Number two, make sure you understand that you can't just preach a sermon on this. It has to be strategic. And then you must take the church into the street. I don't believe in just like preaching in the pulpit. Wherever there's places in the hood, places in communities. And remember, when I say poor and low wage and low wealth, I'm not talking about somebody just, $20,000 a year in a family. From $50,000 in a family for down is where we've got them. 50,000 down. So wherever those pockets are, and if you're mobilizing, in other words, we also have to mobilize from the Delta to Appalachia, from the Delta to Appalachia. I'll tell you a quick story and I'll stop. When Bashir won in Kentucky, y'all know the new guy, we were mobilizing in Kentucky, in Louisville, and in Hazard County. Now, you know the Dukes of Hazzard, right?
Yes.
Folks said, Barbara, you are crazy. They're going to get you out there in Hazard. But what folk didn't know is that in Hazard County and Harlan County, those are the counties from which Justice Harlan came, who was the only Supreme Court justice to vote against Plessy versus Ferguson. They didn't realize that Harlan County and Hazard County are the counties where the song "Which Side Are You On" was written by a white woman who challenged the coal bosses and the government people who were dropping bombs on top of the miners, black and white miners, who were working together in those coal mines. So we went out there and we mobilized and we showed people how they were being fooled and bamboozled, and we challenged anybody who was running to come out there. We didn't endorse a candidate. When we left, Bashir heard the challenge and started changing his schedule. And he didn't just go to Lexington and Louisville. He started going out, not sending somebody, but going out to those counties. And we kept mobilized. Do you know that 4 of those 6 counties flipped in Kentucky? And he unseated an incumbent Republican governor in Kentucky. And the night that he won, he paid homage to what he had learned in the movement. He said, I found out this in running this time that some issues aren't black versus white, they are right versus wrong. Some issues aren't Republican versus Democrat, they are right versus wrong. Some issues are not partisan, they are moral. And he committed to felony reenfranchisement. He committed to restore health care, because he found out a lot of those folk in Eastern Kentucky lost their health care, right? It wasn't just black folk. He found out, but he also found out that raising wages and union, and guess what? He's won a second term. My point is, this can happen, but we have to, as you said, the way you do it is you've got to do a race and an economic mapping of your community. And that's where you go. And the target, when we talk about poor and low wage, is again, $50,000 and below in a family of 4. That's what we call poor and low wage.
Thank you.
And you can't do that unless you actually take the time and understand the data. You got to pull the data to understand what's going on. You can't just have these verbal conversations, anecdotal and stuff along those lines. And you got to, we talked about micro. You got to sit here and you got to say, all right, leaving this rally, collect the data on who's here. Now we're going to need folk to target not just county, city, neighborhood, blocks, streets, houses. It can't just be preachers. It can't just be preachers standing in the pulpit saying, I need y'all to go out and vote. No, the preachers need to be saying there's a 0.05, a 0.10, a 0.25 mile radius around the church, and we gonna knock on doors in our radius. That's how this thing is gonna happen. Because to your point, Trump is there because of 7,000 votes. They can lose if you mobilize 7, 10, 20, 30, 40,000 people, and that's just done one by one. That's micro to macro. You can't do macro to micro.
No. And I want y'all to hear what Ramona and I are saying. The current Congress that is turning loose this president, most of what he's done, he could not have done it without the Congress, right? He could not have passed a big, deadly, ugly, destructive bill. He would not be able to do the tariffs. He would not have been able to have unchecked militarism. Mike Johnson is the speaker because of 7,000 votes in a time when 90 million people didn't vote. And what we should have is our best people. Cornell is one of them. I talk to Cornell all the time. Cecilia Lake is another who focus on these. And you can get it, as Rose said, all the way down to the block. And you target infrequent vote. In other words, these are people who vote, but for some reason they're infrequent. And if you target poor and low wage infrequent voters, up until last year, the majority of poor and low wage folk, when they voted, tend to vote progressive. Now, when you start getting over that 50,000 and you talk about those are the quote unquote whites, if you will, that tend to vote so extreme, is those a little bit. But the reality is, and we blame poor folk for a lot of stuff. The reality is most poor folk have stayed home, right? They don't vote because they say nobody talks to us. Nobody comes to see us. Nobody targets their ads to us. Think about it. When's the last time you've heard a presidential debate where the issue of poverty even got 5 minutes of discussion? Think about it, except on Roland Show, right? So the point is, the data tells us that those folk there's 83 million of them. 57 million voted in the last election. Some 30 million didn't. When we did our targeting, we said to our data folk, we want to reach 15 million, half of the infrequent poor and low wage voters. And I'm gonna tell you, Roland, that what we found out yesterday, and the guy who talked to us and helped us go through the numbers, he said, Reverend Barber, the only reason that you all didn't have a more impact was resources, because you couldn't touch them as much. And he said, and the guy said, it's a shame that folks spent billions of dollars on these consultants and everybody else, and nobody, when they heard what the program you're doing, and this is nonpartisan, didn't at least say, we'll put enough money here so you can reach these folk 10 times. He said that the methodology is right. It's the funding. And we got to understand, everybody's not interested in all the people participating because it would shift the power. But if we say to folks, all I talk, 7,000 votes in the Congress and who people voted for made the difference between whether or not you have who you have leading the Congress.
That
ought to be both frightening, but it also ought to be encouraging, because it tells us that winning now is whether or not we're going to intensify and embolden our voting power agitation.
That's it. Folks, February 11th through the 14th, taking place in North Carolina, blackstarnetwork.com. Put the graphic up, please. Blackstarnetwork.com will be on the ground in support of this with Bishop William Barber, repairs of the Breach Poor People's Campaign. And so again, if y'all can pull the graphic up, that'd be great. Again, this is taking place on February 11th through the 14th. We'll be running that promo video. We're going to have more details about this but again, folks, what Bishop said, this is not just about North Carolina. You should be mobilizing, organizing in your state as well. Bishop, always a pleasure. Appreciate it.
Take care. God bless. Forward together.
Thanks a bunch. Going to a quick break. We come back. Headlines, Black Star Network headlines with Brittany Noble.
If in this country right now, you have people get up in the morning and the only thing they can think about is how many people they can hurt, and they got the power, that's the time for mourning.
For better or worse, what makes America special, it's that legal system that's supposed to protect minorities from the tyranny of the majority.
We are at a point of a moral emergency. We must raise a voice of outrage. We must raise a voice of compassion. And we must raise a voice of unity.
We are not in a crisis of party versus party. We are in a crisis of civilization, a human rights crisis, and a crisis of democracy itself. And guess what? You've been chosen to make sure that those that would destroy, those that would hate, don't have the final say, and they don't ultimately win.
Hey y'all, welcome to The Other Side of Change, only on the Black Star Network and hosted by myself, Bria Baker, and my good sis, Jamira Burley. We are just two millennial women tackling everything at the intersection of politics, gender, and pop culture.
And we don't just settle for commentary. This is about solution-driven dialogue to get us to the world as it could be and not just as it is.
Watch us on the Black Star Network, so tune in to The Other Side of Change.
Melanie Campbell, National Coalition on Black Civic Participation and Black Women's Roundtable. And we are watching Roland Martin Unfiltered all day, every day, 24/7. Spread the word.
Folks, time for Black Star Network headlines with Brittany Noble. Muted. Brittany, you're muted.
I apologize. I'm ready for headlines now.
There we go.
Federal prosecutors have initiated a new criminal investigation into New York Attorney General Letitia James. This comes after a grand jury previously declined to indict her twice on unrelated criminal charges. The new probe represents the latest effort by the Department of Justice to target one of President Trump's political adversaries. James pursued a civil fraud case against Trump after he left office. The focus of the current investigation is on financial transactions between James and her longtime hairdresser. A grand jury has charged James with defrauding a financial institution to secure a better interest rate on a property she purchased in Virginia. A federal judge has ruled that a federal prosecutor is unlawfully serving in upstate New York. Judge Lorna Schofield stated that the Department of Justice attempted to use shortcuts to keep acting U.S. Attorney John Sercone in office despite a 120-day limit for U.S. attorneys whose nominations have not been confirmed by the Senate. This ruling marks the fifth time the judge has determined that a top prosecutor appointed by Attorney General Pam Bondi was served unlawfully. Schofield issued the decision as part of a case brought by New York Attorney General Letitia James' office, which sought to challenge grand jury subpoenas that Sercone had served. Well, the Department of Justice's civil rights chief is scrolling through social media for anti-DEI targets. Hermet Dillon is reportedly using personal social media activity to identify people or entities who express anti-DEI views, potentially as a basis for investigation or legal action. Career attorneys in the DOJ Civil Rights Division typically rely on formal complaints and meticulous evidence vetting to pursue cases. Using social media as a primary source for identifying targets hinges on the First Amendment's protection of free speech and is seen as an unconventional, potentially biased method. Well, a federal judge has dismissed the police reform agreement in Louisville that was related to Breonna Taylor's case. The proposed agreement for police reform, which aimed to establish federal oversight, is coming to an end after several years of effort. This proposal was initiated following the 2020 killing of Breonna Taylor, who was shot by police while she was sleeping in her bed. The judge ruled that the court-enforced settlement could not proceed after the Department of Justice withdrew its support earlier this year. The judge stated that the responsibility for ensuring that the Louisville police comply with the federal law should rest with the city's elected representatives. And Indiana University has canceled the 57th annual Martin Luther King Jr. dinner in Indianapolis, citing budget constraints. The Black Student Union has received formal notification that the event will not take place at the end of the fall semester due to insufficient funding. This decision has frustrated the Black Student Union, which believes it reflects deeper issues and a lack of representation of Black voices in the university's decision-making process. They also suggest that the current political climate may be influencing this decision, claiming that the university is using budgetary excuses to undermine Black traditions under vague justifications. And a North Carolina town is addressing a historic injustice by returning land to the Cherokee Indians. The town of Franklin voted unanimously to return the Naquazi Mound to the Eastern Band of Cherokee Indians. This decision is significant because the mound is the largest unexcavated mound in the Southeast and holds profound spiritual importance for the Cherokee people. The site has been previously owned for about 200 years and was part of a Cherokee mother town before the founding of the United States. The City Council's decision reflects the tribe's commitment to reclaiming ancestral territory and preserving cultural heritage. The next steps will involve the Tribal Council agreeing to take control of the land, initiating the legal process to transfer the title, and ensuring that the site is managed responsibly by the tribe. Roland?
All right, Brittany, we appreciate it. All right, Michael, Candace, as well as Matt. My goodness, there were a couple of congressional hearings this week that were pretty wild. And we showed you Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett and some others, but whoo, man, did Congresswoman Summer Lee of Pennsylvania get into it with James Comer? Watch this.
So many people on this committee have already articulated, nobody here believes that rooting out fraud and waste and abuse is not a top priority of this committee, of our caucus, of their conference. It is. If you're on this committee, it is the top charge that we all undertake incredibly seriously. But I think, like so many things with the modern Republican Party, it's like you're skulking right around the edge of things, but too often, your bigotry, the Republican Party's own bigotry, is imprisoning them and keeping them from ever actually doing something that helps, not harms, the American people. And this is another one of those instances, right? When it's a person of color, if it's 2 or 3, it's a pattern, and the entire community must be indicted. But if it's 100 Republicans, it's just not bad. Neither here nor there, because it's important. That's why we have routinely held hearings where we actually go over with the Government Accountability Office their high-risk list. We take it seriously. But the tone of this hearing seems to be a hypocritical witch hunt. It's hard to take it as anything but that, rather than an actual oversight effort. Our federal government currently has the tools to catch and prevent waste, fraud, and abuse. It's how the alleged fraud in Minnesota was caught by the Biden administration in the first place. Mr. Blue, as a former federal prosecutor, you're familiar with some of the tools that we have, correct?
Yes.
Just briefly, could you please verify the following tools for me? Yes or no? Does the Government Accountability Office work to reduce waste, fraud, and abuse?
Yes.
Do inspectors generals work towards these goals?
Absolutely.
What about the Council of the Inspectors General on Integrity and Efficiency?
Yes.
Are whistleblowers important to rooting out waste, fraud, and abuse?
Absolutely.
Has the Trump administration helped or hurt these tools?
Certainly hurt it by disbanding the Council for Inspectors General and then ultimately firing 19 IGs.
Thank you. That's right. Again and again, Trump has attacked the oversight mechanisms within the federal government. He illegally fired 17 inspectors general and other key personnel. He goes after whistleblowers and he tries to roll back their protections. He routinely ignores the rampant corruption within his own administration. Republicans have turned a blind eye to all of this. They have held no hearings on these actions. And this hearing today isn't even about fraud generally within the federal benefits system, which we would welcome. Republicans have cherry-picked a blue state and an immigrant population, vulnerable, to demonize. To be clear, Minnesota is not the only state with a fraud problem. To truly tackle waste, fraud, and abuse, we need to approach the issue with a scalpel, not a mallet. Discovering that people are committing fraud in the federal program does not mean we should smash the whole thing and end it. It means its oversight mechanisms need to be improved. That's why it's so disappointing to see that the Minnesota House Fraud Prevention Committee that our witness, the Honorable Kristen Robbins, chairs, has issued no reports on these uncovered schemes. It hasn't advanced any legislation to address the issue or even shared whistleblower reports with their Democratic colleagues. They've just held a bunch of hearings and generated headlines, something our committee is all too familiar with. This hearing is not an effort by Republicans to improve social service programs. It's an excuse to end them and to punish Democratic-led states. This has always been the plan. It's why Republicans' so-called big, beautiful bill is estimated to cut more than $1 trillion from Medicaid and CHIP benefits and cut SNAP for 40 million people, the very children or folks with disabilities who were mentioned in the opening statements. Trump has also already taken advantage of the situation in Minnesota. After a YouTuber harassed and posted unsubstantiated claims of fraud against child care centers, HHS froze child care funding to Minnesota, which would affect more than 23,000 children. Just yesterday, Trump also froze approximately $10 billion in funding for programs supporting child care, social services, grants, and cash assistance in not only Minnesota, but in other Democratic-led states of California, Colorado, New York, and Illinois. No matter what party we're elected to, we represent the people of our district, Democrat or Republican. We represent as the federal government all people of all states, irrespective of how they voted. That's the charge that I took, and I would like and hope that you all would do the same. When so many of these social service programs are being gutted and defunded, fraud becomes even more harmful, as that means even less money is going to people who need it. People need these programs. This situation should be an opportunity to take a deep look at the programs and improve their oversight abilities, not an excuse to cut them entirely. If we care about the most vulnerable, if we care about the most marginalized, this is an opportunity to do so, and I welcome us to actually do that one day. Thanks, I yield back.
Ms. Lee, the IGs are hired to identify fraud. They haven't identified fraud. The IGs have failed. But anyway.
You all have failed.
No,
you all continue to fail. We've done nothing. You've had the gavel, Mr. Comer. We barely do hearings on anything that actually affects change. You have power here, and yet you don't do anything. Yes, he actually initiated this, sir, but thank you so much for your opinion.
You have failed.
I yield it back.
Chair recognizes Mr. Perry from Pennsylvania for 5 minutes.
Thank the chair.
Oh, that's how you get that ass, Matt.
Yeah, and that's how you show receipts. I mean, look, this is the same kind of cognitive dissonance we always talk about on the show, but they're the first ones, Republicans primarily, to talk about, rule of law, the process, the whole deal. And then you gut the oversight for that. If you really wanted that, then you would beef up those processes, not remove them. And, I'm glad that she called that out. I'm glad that she specifically said, don't you already have weren't there mechanisms that were supposed to root out what you're claiming is this fraud and abuse and waste? And if you get rid of those, then you're talking out of both sides of your head. And we know that the administration has been doing that. We also know that DOJ, from my understanding, did not post the results that it was talking it was going to have. So that's all lip service. It's all rhetoric. And I think that rhetoric is not going to bode well for them when it comes to the midterm, because what people are actually seeing is inflated cost, and they are not seeing cheaper groceries as they were promised they would be seeing very shortly upon Mr. Trump's return.
Michael?
Yeah, Summer Lee exposed more of this nonsense coming from the Trump administration and coming from these feckless Republicans in a very unproductive 119th Congress. And this is an example. So you had Trump fired 17 inspector generals because criminals don't want oversight. That's what this is about. Criminals do not want oversight, and they want to remove those mechanisms that will be the guardrails that will investigate them. And it's also important to note that the prosecution of Somalis, like in Minnesota, when it came to the COVID-19 fraud and things like this, that began in 2022 under the Biden-Harris administration, under the Biden-Harris Department of Justice. Okay, so Comer doesn't want to mention that for some reason either. But this is the result of 7,000 votes, as Reverend William Barber said. The reason why Republicans are in control of all these committees, the reason why they're in control of the House of Representatives, is because of 7,000 votes, and out of however many million who voted in 2024. So this is what we have to change in 2026. These are consequential elections.
Oh, they are indeed are. And so we'll see exactly how people want to operate when it comes to this. Gentlemen, we appreciate it. Thanks a lot. Matt, Michael, thank you so much. Oh, yes. By the way, Matt, I was waiting for you to congratulate Texas A&M winning the NCAA volleyball championship. I know, I think your parents' school, not yours, because you went to Howard. I think they lost in the semis at home. And so I didn't get to play us, but those things happen. So I just want to give you that shout out. Congrats on at least making it to the semifinals. Semifinals. No, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. You didn't make. Hold on, wait. I'm sorry. Hold on. I just messed up. Hold on. Let me factually correct myself. Y'all didn't make it to semifinals. You lost in the. You lost in the eight. We made it to the semis and won the national title. It's all good.
You never should have done this. Didn't you?
But that's nice. Congratulations on a decent season. But the best team in the SEC, as well as the national champions, or
Yeah,
Texas
okay.
A&M.
All
So
right, all
way to
right,
go.
all
So
right, all right.
Hey,
Pull up the
Roland.
so
graphic.
we'll
Pull up the
we'll
graphic.
move
What was
on to
that
we'll
Texas
move on to
A&M score?
basketball next. Michael, go
What was
ahead.
that Texas
And
A&M
before we
score?
leave, I got to give a shout out to my brothers of Phi Beta Sigma Fraternity Incorporated. Happy
Why?
112 Founders Day as well. Since you mentioned Howard University, founded January 9th, 1914. So we got to give a shout out to them, Blue Phi Go Mob, and shout out to my frat brother there in your control room, Terrell, as well.
When is y'all Founders Day?
January 9th, today.
Oh, okay.
You know it, Roland. Stop.
No,
playing.
literally, I do not.
You know
literally,
it. It's
I do
all
not.
over your
Literally.
timeline. You know it.
Actually,
you
it's
know
not.
it.
I don't think there's absolutely nothing on my timeline about Phi Beta Sigma.
You know it's
Like,
all over your
like
timeline.
nothing. I have not seen jack on my timeline about Phi Beta Sigma. I mean,
well,
like,
I know you're
like,
older than me. I think it's time for you to go get your eyes checked again.
Like not now social media. And I'm on 12 social media. I ain't seen nothing on Instagram, fan base, TikTok,
It's all
Snapchat,
over.
Twitter, Facebook, YouTube,
It's all over. Yeah.
Stoppable, Spiel, LinkedIn. I'm
on Facebook and Instagram.
So
it's
that's
all over
cute.
the place.
That's
1.1 million on Facebook. The
That's
African History
cute.
Network. It's all over.
Okay.
You know. You
That's
may want
cool.
to get your eyes checked again, Roland.
That's cute on y'all nice little day. But yeah, that's cute. That's cute. So congratulations on your cute day. All right. That is
Thanks. Happy New Year.
That is it for us. Y'all know the only thing that matters is December 4th, 1906. The rest of these people, whatever. All right, Matt, Michael, Candace, I thank y'all. Thank you so very much. All right, y'all, that's it for us. Hopefully I'll be back in the studio. We're doing a lot of great things, a lot of rewiring, change audio, video stuff, a lot of new things we're adding. And we're upgrading in a huge way. Those things are happening as we speak. And so we look forward to being back in the studio and showing you all the new things that we're doing. But if y'all want to support the work that we do, please do so. Listen, your contribution make it all possible for us to do the work that we do. And we stand with that. And so if you want to support us via Cash App, use the Stripe QR code. You see it right here. The goal is to get 20,000 people on average contributing $50 each a year to support the work that we do. So that's for Cash App, also for credit cards. PayPal's R Martin Unfiltered, Venmo's RM Unfiltered, Zelle, Roland at RolandSMartin.com, Roland at RolandMartinUnfiltered.com. Make checks payable to Roland Martin Unfiltered, P.O. Box 57196, Washington, D.C. 20037-0196. You want to get download the Black Star Network app, Apple phone, Android phone, Apple TV, Android TV, Amazon Fire TV, Roku, and Samsung Smart TV. Also, if you want to get our Roland Martin Unfiltered Black Star Network swag, all you got to go to shopblackstarnetwork.com. Shopblackstarnetwork.com to get our swag. Again, t-shirts, hoodies, all that good stuff. Y'all, we're showing the wrong graphic. We should be showing the graphic with the swag. And so again, go to shopblackstarnetwork.com to support our Black-owned businesses. All those products you see on the website as well. All those are available at shopblackstarnetwork.com. And so please check them out as well. And folks, we're almost at the goal of raising $17 million for fan base. So simply go to, first of all, download the app, some great features, and download the app. But you can also, if you want to invest, get more information at startengine.com/fan base. Every Friday, we end the show showing all the people who donated. We've got nearly 37,000 donors since we launched this show September 4th, 2018. We appreciate every single donor. And so although we could easily just say we're only going to show the donors in the past year, no, we show all of the donors who've contributed to our show. And so we're going to close the show out with that, folks. I'll see y'all on Monday right here, Roland Martin Unfiltered on the Black Star Network. Holla!